For years, Porsche had specialized in efficient, reliable, but relatively small engines. Flat fours, flat sixes, and prototypes that excelled in classes under 3.0 liters. They had proven themselves at the Nürburgring, at the Targa Florio, and even at Le Mans in lower categories. But they had never gone head-to-head with the big dogs, Ferrari's V12s or Ford's massive V8s. That was about to change. The FIA, the governing body of motorsport, announced new rules that would allow prototype cars with engines up to 5.0 liters, provided that at least 25 examples were built for homologation. Most manufacturers considered this insane. Building 25 prototypes was enormously expensive and time-consuming, but Porsche saw an opening. They were willing to gamble everything. The result of that gamble was the Porsche 917, powered by the flat 12 engine. Essentially, it was like two of Porsche's trusty flat sixes welded together, creating a 4.5-liter, 12-cylinder beast. This was no ordinary engine. It was air-cooled, lightweight thanks to magnesium construction, and designed to deliver immense power without sacrificing Porsche's obsession with reliability. Early versions produced around 580 horsepower at 8,300 RPM, a staggering figure when most endurance cars of the era struggled to reach 450. But raw power was only part of the story. The horizontally opposed layout gave the engine a lower center of gravity, improving balance and stability. It was compact for its displacement, allowing Porsche's engineers to package it into an aerodynamically sleek chassis. On paper, the 917 was the perfect fusion of speed and endurance. In reality, it was a monster. Drivers who tested the early 900s and 17s described them as unpredictable, unstable, even terrifying. The flat 12 produced so much thrust that the aerodynamics simply couldn't keep up. At over 200 miles per hour, the car would weave, lift, and dance on the edge of control. Joe Siffert, one of Porsche's top drivers, reportedly refused to race it at first. Others joked that you had to have a death wish to tame the 917. Still, Porsche was committed. They had built 25 cars for homologation, lining them up in front of inspectors in an audacious display of engineering muscle. The message was clear. Porsche wasn't just here to participate. They were here to dominate. By 1970, the 917 had evolved. Engineers fixed much of its instability by experimenting with aerodynamics, eventually creating the 917K or Kurzheck, German for short tail. This version solved the high-speed instability, transforming the 917 from a terrifying gamble into the most feared race car on the planet. With its flat 12 now pushing 620 horsepower at 8,400 RPM, the 917K was not only stable, but brutally fast. It could accelerate from 0 to 200 miles per hour faster than many cars could reach 100. On the Mulsanne Straight at Le Mans, it would scream past at over 220 miles per hour, the flat 12 howling like a mechanical banshee that seemed unstoppable. In 1970, Porsche claimed its first ever overall victory at Le Mans. It was a watershed moment. The brand that once specialized in lightweight underdog sports cars had beaten the giants at their own game, and it didn't stop there. In 1971, the 917 repeated its Le Mans triumph, breaking distance and speed records that stood for decades. Drivers like Hans Herrmann, Richard Atwood, Helmut Marko, and Gijs van Lennep became legends behind the wheel of the 917. Some described the experience as exhilarating. Others called it outright terrifying. At 220 miles per hour, with minimal downforce and 600 raging horsepower behind you, every bump, every twitch of the steering wheel felt like it could be your last. Yet the car's results spoke for themselves. Dominance across the World Sports Car Championship. The flat 12 wasn't just powerful, it was reliable. In endurance racing, that combination was lethal. Rivals like Ferrari, Alfa Romeo, and Matra couldn't match it. Ferrari's 512S was powerful but heavy and fragile. Alfa Romeo's V8 prototypes were nimble but lacked the outright speed. The Porsche Flat 12 had cracked the formula, and the 917 ruled supreme. For fans, the car became an instant icon. Its Gulf oil livery, immortalized in Steve McQueen's 1971 film Le Mans, cemented its place in motorsport mythology. For Porsche, the Flat 12 had not just won races, it had elevated the company into the elite, rewriting its image from a scrappy underdog to a world-conquering powerhouse. But with great power comes great consequences. The Porsche Flat 12 was, quite simply, too much. By 1971, the FIA grew increasingly concerned. The 917 was so dominant that it threatened to make endurance racing irrelevant. Fans loved the speed, but safety was becoming a serious issue. At 220 miles per hour, with minimal aerodynamics, even a slight mistake could be fatal. Drivers voiced concerns. The Flat 12's immense power meant the 917 required absolute focus and bravery. It wasn't a car you drove, it was a car you survived. Crashes at Le Mans, the Nürburgring, and other circuits were reminders of the razor's edge these machines were balancing on. The FIA responded by rewriting the rules. For the 1972 season, prototypes would be limited to 3.0 liters, effectively outlawing the 917 in its mighty flat 12. Overnight, Porsche's most powerful weapon was gone, but Porsche wasn't finished. They adapted the flat 12 for the Can-Am series in North America. There, rules were far looser, and Porsche unleashed the full potential of the engine by adding turbochargers. The result was the Porsche 917/30, powered by a twin turbocharged version of the flat 12 that produced anywhere from 1,100 to 1,500 horsepower, depending on boost. It was and still is one of the most powerful racing cars ever built. The 917/30 crushed Can-Am so thoroughly that the series itself began to crumble. Rivals had no chance against the sheer power and speed of Porsche's monster. Once again, the flat 12 had proven itself too good for its own good, forcing regulators to intervene and curtail its dominance. Though its reign in endurance racing was brief, the Porsche flat 12 left an impact that still resonates today. It demonstrated that endurance cars could combine raw power with durability, shattering the old belief that engines had to sacrifice one for the other. The flat 12 also shaped Porsche's future. The lessons learned from the 917 fed directly into the company's turbocharging programs, eventually leading to the Porsche 956 and 962, cars that dominated the 1980s. Even the road-going Porsche 911 Turbo owes part of its DNA to the experimentation done with the 917's flat 12. Beyond the engineering, the flat 12 left a cultural legacy. The sight and sound of a 917 thundering down the Mulsanne Straight remains one of motorsport's most iconic memories. Fans describe the howl of the flat 12 as a sound that seemed alive. Part symphony, part scream, part threat. Few engines have ever been so emotional, so evocative, so unforgettable. For Porsche, the 917 represented a turning point. It was the moment the brand stopped being seen as a small sports car manufacturer and became a giant in motorsport. The flat 12 wasn't just an engine, it was a statement, a declaration that Porsche could and would compete with anyone. So why is the Porsche flat 12 remembered as the greatest racing engine ever made? Because it embodied everything racing is meant to be. It was ambitious. Porsche took a gamble no one thought possible, building 25 prototypes and creating a 12-cylinder monster when everyone else was downsizing. It was dominant, crushing rivals at Le Mans and across Europe, leaving Ferrari and Alfa Romeo in its dust. It was dangerous, pushing the boundaries of safety and speed so far that regulators were forced to act. And above all, it was unforgettable. The flat 12 didn't just win races, it defined an era. It showed that brilliance and recklessness often walk hand in hand. It proved that the line between innovation and madness is razor thin. And it reminded the world that motorsport is not just about numbers or trophies, it's about moments that live forever in memory. When fans hear the roar of a flat 12 today, they don't just hear an engine, they hear the ghosts of Le Mans, the thunder of speed records shattered, the whispers of drivers who dared to tame it. They hear a reminder of an era when racing was raw, unfiltered, and dangerous in ways modern motorsport will never be again. The Porsche flat 12 wasn't just an engine, it was a revolution, a force of nature, the brightest flame in the history of endurance racing, one that burned too hot, too fast, and too brilliantly to last.